Hey guys, so in today's video I'm going to be going over what a variable is within Python and how you can use variables in your own algorithms to create some pretty cool stuff. So a variable usually starts with a lowercase or an underscore. For example, I have the letter A right here. This A is the variable and it is being bound to the value of hello, which is a string. And if we were to print A, what would happen is we would get hello printed out to us because A is being bound to the value of hello. Something to also keep in mind is you could also do B equals A. Now, what would happen here, if you haven't already guessed, is if we were to print B, because B is holding the value of A and A is holding the value of hello, what would happen is we would get hello again. So just kind of go ahead and remember that whenever you have a variable being bound to a value, it'll always hold that value until it's reassigned another value. And what I mean by that is you could also reassign, for example, if we wanted to say A equals 1, we could always now say A equals 1, but what would happen if we were to print B is it would still print hello. So let's go ahead and see the two in action. So what we got from printing B is still hello because A up here is holding the value of hello, and likewise A down here is holding the value of 1. So just remember that Python usually things, whenever you type in any kind of script, it'll go from the top down, and sometimes it can go back up to the top if you want to reference like a while loop or a for loop or something like that. But generally, when it comes to variables, whatever you happen to say this variable is being bound to the value of, that's what it will hold until you decide, until you declare that this variable now holds this value. So just a couple things to keep in mind. When creating variables, just know that those variables, once they're written, they're going to hold the value that you assign to it. And likewise, it's very useful to have a variable that is actually used within the script itself. For example, I have a script right here that I've created that I use to create quotes. What I've done up top is I've imported my libraries, and then below that I actually have the variables being assigned to different values. So for example, right here I have the variable that of path, and I want to say that path is going to be bound to the string value of my D compartment within my computer, and it's going to hold the file of maker. So path, once I need to call it, I can move down to dirs, which is short for directory, which is equal to the os list dir. And essentially this is a function that is then calling the path of this variable. So just kind of remember that when you do create your own scripts, to be descriptive and to also remember to start with a lowercase or an underscore. But it's always better practice to start with a lowercase than an underscore. It's just kind of keep that in mind when creating your own scripts. But sometimes you will find a underscore equal to hello, for example. Now, if you ever happen to see this underscore, whatever the value is, usually it'll hold that value, but generally the programmer that left the underscore there without anything else around it, they're just saying, I don't really care about what variable this is. I just need a variable to hold a value that will be called later. And then you'll often see like for underscore in range 100 or whatever. And it'll print underscore. That's just kind of an example of how they would use a variable within a for loop or even within a algorithm to go ahead and be used for whatever you need to use it for. So hopefully that kind of makes a little sense now that you've actually kind of seen it in action, like what variables do. I'll go ahead and delete the rest of this. Just remember that variables will start with a lowercase or an underscore, and generally it's better practice to start with a lowercase. So kind of one of the last thing to keep in mind when working with variables is when you come across variables like in the wild, you might happen to see something like this. Let's get rid of these components here. And then what you'll see is you'll see a variable that's similar to like A, B, C. And they want to say that A equals 1, B equals 2, and C equals 3. And if you were to print that, they would go ahead and print 1, 2, and 3. So actually kind of one of the things that I even used in my own path right here is I have max width W for max width and then max height. And then I'm setting the width, which is 600 pixels by 900 pixels. And then for those that don't know, that's a Pinterest quote. So just kind of to keep it in mind when working with variables, usually they start with lowercase, but they can start with an underscore, but it's better practice to start with the lowercase. Make sure that the variable actually holds value and meaning. Otherwise, a poorly written variable can be quite confusing, especially if you're looking through this for the first time and you're not sure what to read. For example, if I were to say ders equals OS lister, you wouldn't really know if my variable is a variable or if it's actually a function. And functions cannot be variables. So just kind of keep in mind when you do create your own variables to be specific, very specific. And then finally, likewise, you can have two variables separated by commas equal to whatever the values you want them to be equal to. One other thing to go ahead and keep in mind is that when working with variables, you cannot use a keyword as a variable. For example, you cannot use print, if, elif, while, for. So for example, like if you were to use for equals a, you wouldn't actually be able to print this because for is considered a keyword in Python. So if we were to like run this, we get an invalid syntax. Now, if you do just a quick Google search for what keywords there are in Python, you'll be able to come up with quite a lot. Just kind of know that when working with variables, you cannot use the basic print, if, elif, and so on. Whenever creating variables, just go ahead and create your own and just be as descriptive as possible. So yeah, so hopefully you guys learned a little bit more about Python programming. If you like, please feel free to check out some of my other videos where I go over basic Python functions and programming. And hopefully eventually I'll be able to show you guys how to create one of these from scratch. But yeah, thanks for watching this video and I'll see you in the next video. Thanks guys.